The bullet missed Jin Kang's head by exactly 3 inches. He didn't flinch, didn't blink, just stood there in his $10,000 suit while the man who'd tried to kill him trembled on his knees, begging for mercy in a language Jin barely understood. "You have a wife," Jin said, his voice cold enough to freeze hell itself. 2 children, a daughter who just turned 7. The man's eyes went wide with terror. Please, please, I was desperate. The gambling debts. I had no choice." "There's always a choice." Jin pulled out his phone, checked the time. 8:47 p.m. He had a meeting at 9. "Unfortunately for you, I don't give second chances." He nodded to his right-hand man, Vincent Cho, a mountain of muscle, with a face that looked like it had been carved from stone by someone who hated happiness. "Make it clean," Jin said, already walking away. "I just had this suit pressed." The sound of the silenced gunshot barely registered as Jin stepped into the elevator, adjusting his cufflinks. His reflection stared back at him from the mirrored walls, a 30-year-old face that had seen too much death to feel anything anymore. Sharp jawline, cold eyes that people said looked like frozen black coffee, hair styled perfectly, not a strand out of place, the kind of handsome that made women stare and men nervous. Jin Kang ran the most powerful criminal organization on the West Coast. Drugs, weapons, money laundering, you name it, his fingers were in it. He'd built his empire on blood and fear, and he intended to keep it that way. His phone buzzed, a message from his assistant. "Sir, the cleaning service called. Your regular housekeeper quit. They're sending a replacement tonight." Jin rolled his eyes. This was the 4th housekeeper this month. The last one had walked in on him interrogating a traitor and immediately collapsed. The one before that had found a gun in his sock drawer and called the police. He'd had to pay off 3 different precincts to make that problem disappear. "Tell them if this one quits within a week, I'm buying their company and firing everyone," Jin typed back. He arrived at his penthouse at exactly 10:30 p.m., exhausted and covered in someone else's blood. Don't ask. The meeting had gotten complicated. All he wanted was a shower, a glass of whiskey, and absolute silence. What he got was something else entirely. The moment he opened the door, a small human cannonball slammed into his legs with the force of a tiny hurricane. "Mister, you're so tall. Are you a giant? Do giants eat children? Because Luna says giants eat children, but I told her that stupid giants only eat vegetables." Jin looked down in horror at the small creature attached to his leg. It was a child. A tiny, chaotic, chocolate-smeared child with pigtails that looked like they'd been styled by a tornado. "What?" Jin said flatly. "Is this? Sora, get off the nice man right now." A woman came running from the kitchen, face flushed, eyes panicked. She was young, maybe mid-20s, with dark hair escaping from a messy bun and an apron covered in what appeared to be every cleaning product known to mankind. "I am so sorry," she gasped, prying the child off Jin's leg. "Sora, what did I tell you about attacking strangers?" "You said don't do it," the little girl said cheerfully, but he looked lonely. Jin stared at the woman, then at the child, then back at the woman. "Who are you?" he said, in a voice that had made grown men wet themselves. "And why is there a child in my penthouse?" The woman straightened up, attempting to look professional despite the chaos radiating from her very existence. "I'm Mara Santos. The cleaning service sent me. I'm your new housekeeper." She thrust out her hand for a handshake. Jin looked at it like she'd offered him a dead fish. "They failed to mention," he said slowly, "that you came with accessories." "Oh!" Mara's face went through about 17 emotions in 3 seconds. "I am so sorry. My regular babysitter canceled last minute, my mom's out of town, and I couldn't afford to lose this job, and I swear they'll be quiet. You won't even know they're here." "They?" Jin's eye twitched. Luna, come say hi to the giant." Another child emerged from behind the couch. This one was identical to the first. Same pigtails, same chocolate smears, same chaotic energy, but her expression was dramatically different. Where Sora looked like pure, unbridled joy, this one had a face like a tiny, skeptical judge. "He doesn't look like a giant. Luna said, crossing her arms. He looks like a vampire. Look at him. He's all pale and he wears black, and he probably drinks blood. I don't drink blood, Jin said before he could stop himself. Why was he defending himself to a 5-year-old? That's exactly what a vampire would say, Luna countered. Mara looked like she wanted the floor to swallow her whole. Luna, sweetheart, please don't accuse our employer of being a vampire. I'm just stating facts, Mommy. Jin pinched the bridge of his nose. A migraine was forming behind his eyes, sharp and persistent. He had killed 3 people today. He had negotiated $1 million arms deal. He had literally watched a man beg for his life without feeling a single emotion. And now he was being undone by 2 5-year-olds and their disaster of a mother. Get out, he said. Mara's face crumbled. Please, Mr. Kang, I really need this job. I'll make sure they stay out of your way. I promise. I'll lock them in a closet if I have to. You can't lock us in a closet, Sora announced. That's child abuse. We learned about it in school. We'll call the police, Luna added solemnly. Jin felt something strange happening to his face. It took him a moment to realize his eye was twitching uncontrollably. One night, he heard himself say, you have one night to prove you can do this job without your offspring destroying my home. If I find a single fingerprint on my walls, you're done. Mara's face lit up like Christmas morning. Thank you. Thank you so much. You won't regret this. Jin was already regretting it. He turned to walk toward his bedroom, desperate for that shower and whiskey, when something caught his eye. His shirt. His pristine, white, custom-made Italian silk shirt that cost more than most people's monthly rent. There was a tiny chocolate handprint right over his heart. He looked down at Sora, who was smiling up at him with the innocence of a child who had absolutely no idea she'd just committed a capital offense. I gave you a hug, she said proudly, because you looked sad. Jin Kang, the most feared mafia boss on the West Coast, the man who had built his empire on blood and terror, the man who had never shown weakness to anyone, stood there in his ruined shirt and felt something crack in his chest. He didn't know what it was. But he knew he didn't like it. Vincent, he called out without turning around, add chocolate to the list of banned substances in this building. From somewhere in the hallway, his right-hand man's confused voice echoed back. Sir, did you say chocolate? I said what I said. Jin disappeared into his bedroom, leaving behind a bewildered Mara and 2 tiny girls who had somehow managed to do what no enemy ever had. They'd gotten under his skin. And this was only the first night. The next morning, Jin woke up at exactly 6 a.m., as he always did. He had a routine: shower, meditation, review of overnight reports, protein shake, gym session, then business meetings until midnight. It was a routine that had kept him sharp, focused, and emotionally dead inside for the past decade. Today, his routine was interrupted by a 5-year-old standing at the foot of his bed, staring at him like a tiny possessed doll from a horror movie. What the? Jin jerked upright, hand automatically reaching for the gun under his pillow. Your eyes are open now, Luna observed calmly. I was checking if you were dead because you sleep very still, and Mommy said dead people sleep still. Jin's heart was pounding so hard he could hear it in his ears. He'd faced assassination attempts, rival gang attacks, and FBI raids. None of it had prepared him for waking up to a child's face 6 inches from his own. How? He managed through gritted teeth. Did you get in here? The door was locked, but Sora found a bobby pin in the bathroom, and I learned how to pick locks from YouTube. Jin made a mental note to have every lock in the building replaced with fingerprint scanners. Where is your mother? Making breakfast. She said not to bother you, but I wanted to see if vampires sleep in coffins. Luna tilted her head. You don't. Interesting. I'm not a vampire. That's still what a vampire would say. Jin got out of bed, suddenly very aware that he was wearing nothing but boxer shorts. He grabbed a robe, wrapping it around himself with as much dignity as he could muster. Go back to your mother. Now. Luna didn't move. Your house is very clean. And very boring. There's no toys anywhere. Didn't you have toys when you were a kid? Something flickered in Jin's chest. A memory, old and painful, of a childhood that had been anything but innocent. "No," he said shortly. "I didn't." Luna's expression shifted. For a moment, she looked almost sad. "That's terrible. Everyone should have toys. Even vampires." Before Jin could respond, she turned and walked out of the room, leaving him standing there in his robe, feeling like he'd just been emotionally assessed by a kindergartner. He definitely needed that whiskey, and it wasn't even 7 a.m. Downstairs, the penthouse smelled incredible, like actual food, not the protein shakes and meal replacement bars Jin usually survived on, but real, homemade, delicious food. He found Mara in the kitchen, moving with surprising efficiency despite the chaos of the previous night. The counters were spotless, the floors gleamed, and there was a stack of perfectly golden pancakes on the table. "Good morning, Mr. Kang." She was way too cheerful for this hour. "I made breakfast. I know it wasn't in my job description, but I thought you might be hungry. And I had all these ingredients just sitting there, and—" "Where are the demons?" Jin interrupted. Mara blinked. "The demons? Your children." "Oh," she laughed, a warm sound that Jin found inexplicably irritating. "They're in the living room. I set up a little play area for them with some coloring books I brought. They'll be quiet, I promise." Jin walked to the living room, expecting destruction. Instead, he found both girls sitting on the floor, completely absorbed in their coloring. Sora was coloring a unicorn in shades of aggressive pink. Luna was coloring what appeared to be a dragon eating a city. They looked almost peaceful. "See?" Mara appeared beside him, voice hopeful. "Angels." As if on cue, Sora looked up and beamed. "Mr. Vampire, come color with us." "I don't color." "Why not? Do your fingers not work? Did they fall off?" "Luna said vampire parts fall off if they don't drink enough blood." "My fingers work fine." "Then come color." Sora patted the floor beside her. "I saved you the black crayon because you like black. You can color the vampire bat. Look, it's on page 7. Jin looked at Mara, who was trying very hard to suppress a smile. "I have meetings," he said stiffly. "Important business." "You're wearing a bathrobe," Luna pointed out without looking up from her carnage-filled coloring page. Jin looked down. She was right. "I need to change." "The pancakes will get cold," Mara said, "and I made them specifically for you. Well, for everyone, but mostly for you, as a thank you for not firing me." Jin wanted to say he didn't eat carbs. He wanted to say he had a strict diet. He wanted to say that he was a feared crime lord who didn't sit down for family breakfasts with his housekeeper and her chaotic offspring. Instead, he sat down at the table and ate 3 pancakes while 2 5-year-olds debated whether unicorns or dragons would win in a fight. It was the strangest morning of his life. And somewhere, deep in the frozen wasteland of his heart, something began to thaw. He hated it. The first week was chaos. Pure, unfiltered, beautiful chaos. Jin came home on Monday to find his entire living room had been transformed into a blanket fort. Pillows everywhere, sheets draped from the furniture to the walls, Christmas lights strung up inside, even though it was March. "Welcome to Fort Awesome!" Sora screamed, emerging from the structure like a tiny general. "Password is butterfly unicorn sparkle." "I don't know the password," Jin said flatly. "Then you can't come in. Those are the rules." Luna's head popped out from another section of the fort. "Actually, we could make him an honorary member if he brings us snacks." Jin looked at Mara, who was frantically trying to disassemble the fort while simultaneously apologizing. "I am so sorry. I turned my back for 5 minutes and they just—" "Butterfly unicorn sparkle," Jin said. Everyone froze. Mara's jaw dropped. The twins exchanged looks of pure shock. "Did the vampire just say the password?" Luna whispered. Jin grabbed his laptop and stepped over the pillow barrier, settling himself in the corner of the fort. "I have emails to answer. Keep the noise down." For once in their lives, Sora and Luna were completely silent. Jin pretended not to notice the identical grins spreading across their faces. Tuesday was worse. Jin walked into his home office to find Sora sitting in his chair, wearing his glasses and holding a pen like a scepter. "I'm the boss now," she announced. "Everyone has to listen to me. Those are prescription." "What does that mean?" "It means they're made for my eyes. They'll hurt yours." Sora immediately pulled them off and squinted at him. "Your eyes are broken?" "My eyes are fine. The glasses help me see small things clearly." "Like what? Like ants? Can you see tiny, tiny ants with them?" "Like documents, contracts." Sora looked profoundly disappointed. "That's boring. You should use them to see ants. Or fairies. Luna says fairies aren't real, but I know they are because I saw one in the garden last summer." Jin sat down across from her, suddenly curious despite himself. What did it look like? Sora's whole face lit up. It was tiny, and it had wings, and they were all sparkly, and it was sitting on a flower, and when it saw me looking, it flew away super fast like Zoom. That might have been a butterfly. No, it was definitely a fairy. Butterflies don't wear tiny dresses. Jin had absolutely no counter-argument for that logic. Wednesday, Luna declared war. Not on Jin, surprisingly, but on his kitchen. "Your food is terrible," she announced at breakfast, pushing away a bowl of oatmeal. "This tastes like sadness and cardboard." "Luna!" Mara looked mortified. "That's rude. Mommy, you always say to tell the truth." "I said be honest, not be mean." "It's the same thing." Jin, who privately agreed about the oatmeal, fought to keep his expression neutral. "What would you prefer?" Luna considered this, with the seriousness of a UN diplomat. "Waffles, with whipped cream, and strawberries, and chocolate chips, and sprinkles." "That's not breakfast, that's diabetes." "That's an opinion." Jin stared at her. Luna stared back, completely unintimidated. "Fine," he said finally. "Next weekend, I'll have the chef make waffles." "You have a chef?" "I have several." Luna's eyes went wide. "Are they vampires too?" "I'm not a—" Jin stopped, sighed deeply. "No, they're not vampires." "How do you know? Have you checked their teeth?" Jin had never in his life felt so thoroughly defeated by a conversation. Thursday brought a new development. Jin was in the middle of a video call with some very dangerous people from overseas when his office door burst open. Sora ran in crying, threw herself at his legs, and sobbed directly into his knee. On the screen, 3 international crime lords watched in confused silence. Said the man from Tokyo. "Is that a child?" "Luna said my drawing was ugly," Sora wailed. "And it's not ugly. It's a beautiful horse. And horses have 5 legs sometimes." Jin's face was completely blank, professionally blank. The kind of blank that came from years of negotiating with murderers. "Gentlemen," he said calmly, "I'll need to call you back." He ended the call, looked down at the sobbing child attached to his leg, and felt his entire life flash before his eyes. "Horses," he said slowly, "have 4 legs. Not magical horses," Sora sobbed. "Magical horses have 5 because the extra one is for good luck." Jin had absolutely no response to this. Mara appeared in the doorway, face flushed. "Sora, baby, I told you not to interrupt Mr. Kang when he's working." "But Luna was mean." "Luna always expresses her opinions strongly. That doesn't mean your drawing is ugly." "She said the horse looked like a deformed spider." Jin looked at Mara. Mara looked at Jin. There was a shared moment of adult solidarity. "Where is the drawing?" Jin asked. Sora sniffled and pulled a crumpled paper from her pocket. She held it up with trembling hands, her lower lip wobbling. Jin examined it with the seriousness of an art critic at the Louvre. It was, objectively, terrible. The proportions were nightmarish. The colors clashed violently. The 5th leg was indeed concerning. It was also the most genuine thing Jin had seen in years. "This is excellent," he said. Sora's tears stopped immediately. "Really?" "The use of color is very bold, and the extra leg shows creative thinking." Mara's expression softened into something Jin couldn't quite read. "Can I put it on your fridge?" Sora asked, already bouncing back with the emotional resilience of a rubber ball. Jin didn't have anything on his fridge. He'd never had anything on his fridge. His fridge was stainless steel and pristine and absolutely, deliberately empty. "Fine," he heard himself say, "but only one drawing." By Friday, there were 7 drawings on his fridge, and Jin had somehow stopped noticing. But Friday also brought something else. Something that reminded Jin exactly why he'd built walls around his heart in the first place. He was in a meeting at his downtown office, reviewing security protocols with Vincent, when his phone rang. Unknown number. He usually ignored those, but something made him pick up. Jin Kang. A voice. Disguised. Electronic. "We know about the woman. We know about the children. 42 Oak Street, apartment 7B. That's where they live when they're not playing house with you. One wrong move, and they disappear. We'll be in touch." The line went dead. Jin sat there, phone in hand, feeling something he hadn't felt in years. Fear. Not for himself. Never for himself. But for them. He pulled up the security feeds from his penthouse on his laptop. The living room camera showed Sora and Luna building another blanket fort, while Mara folded laundry nearby, laughing at something one of them had said. They had no idea. They had no idea that by walking into his life, they'd also walked into the crosshairs of every enemy Jin had ever made. And Jin had made a lot of enemies. Vincent noticed his expression. "Sir, what's wrong?" Jin closed the laptop slowly. His face was calm, but his eyes had gone cold in a way that made Vincent instinctively step back. "Someone just threatened what's mine," Jin said quietly. "The shipment? The territory?" "No." Jin stood, buttoning his jacket with deliberate precision. "Something far more valuable." For the first time in his career, Jin Kang was about to go to war, not for money, not for power, not for territory, but for a woman who made pancakes and 2 little girls who had ruined his favorite shirt. And heaven help anyone who stood in his way. That night, Jin came home 3 hours late. Mara was asleep on the couch, a book open on her chest. The twins were in the guest room, tucked into the bed he'd had delivered specifically for them, even though he'd told himself it was just for convenience, just so they'd stop sleeping on the couch, just practical. He stood in the doorway of the guest room, watching them sleep. Sora was sprawled out like a starfish, taking up 70% of the bed. Luna was curled in the remaining space, hugging a stuffed dragon she'd named Mr. Chomps. They looked so small, so vulnerable. Jin thought about the phone call, about the threat, about the 100 different ways his enemies could hurt them. He thought about sending them away, firing Mara, making them leave before anyone could use them against him. It was the smart move, the logical move, the move that Jin Kang, ruthless mafia boss, should absolutely make. But then Sora shifted in her sleep, murmuring something about unicorns, and Luna's small hand reached out unconsciously to pat her sister's arm, and Jin realized with a sinking feeling that he couldn't do it. He couldn't send them away. Somewhere between chocolate-stained shirts and 5-legged horses and blanket forts, these 3 disasters had become his. And Jin Kang protected what was his, even if it killed him. He pulled out his phone and made a call. "Vincent, wake up the security team. I want around-the-clock surveillance on this building, the woman's apartment, and every route between them. No one gets close without my knowledge." "Sir, is this about the threat?" "It's about making sure no one ever threatens them again." He hung up and turned to find Mara standing in the hallway, half awake and confused. "Mr. Kang, is everything okay?" Jin looked at her, really looked at her, for the first time since she'd crashed into his life. She was beautiful, not in the polished, artificial way of the women who usually surrounded him. Beautiful in a real way, sleep-rumpled and worried and completely, utterly genuine. "Everything's fine," he lied. "Go back to sleep." "You look," she hesitated. "You look worried, and I've never seen you look worried before, which is kind of worrying me." "I said I'm fine." "You know," Mara said softly, "you don't have to be fine all the time. Even big scary mafia bosses are allowed to have feelings." Jin's eye twitched. "Who told you I was a mafia boss?" "Mr. Kang, You have a literal gun collection in your hall closet, and last week a man came here with a briefcase full of cash. I'm not stupid. Jin had severely underestimated his housekeeper. And you stayed anyway? Mara shrugged. You pay well. You're nice to my kids even though you pretend not to be. And honestly, you seem really lonely. She smiled slightly. Besides, I've worked worse jobs. Have you ever been a waitress at a sports bar during playoffs? That's real danger. Jin felt that strange cracking sensation in his chest again. Go to sleep, Mara, he said, but his voice was softer than he intended. We'll talk in the morning. She nodded and turned to go, then paused. Mr. Kang? Yes? The girls really like you. I know they're a lot. I know they're loud and chaotic, and they've probably ruined half your expensive stuff. But they ask about you all day when you're gone. Sora calls you the vampire, but she means it affectionately, I promise. And Luna doesn't warm up to anyone, but she's started saving her best drawings for you. Jin didn't know what to say, so he said nothing. Mara smiled sadly and walked back to the couch. Jin stood in the dark hallway for a long time, thinking about enemies and threats and two little girls who had looked at a monster and seen something worth drawing pictures for. He made a decision. No one would touch them. He would burn the world down first. Hashtag. Batch B. 2 weeks later, Jin was starting to lose his mind. Not because of the threats, those he could handle, but because somewhere along the way, he'd developed a routine that included bedtime stories. No, you have to do the voices, Sora insisted, bouncing on the bed. The dragon has to sound scary. The dragon is scary. I'm reading the words in a scary way. That's not scary, that's just boring reading. Luna's dragon voice is better. Luna, sitting cross-legged at the foot of the bed, shrugged modestly. I have range. Jin looked at Mara for help. She was leaning against the doorframe, arms crossed, enjoying his suffering way too much. You're on your own, she said cheerfully. You agreed to story time. I agreed to read, not perform. Same thing when you have an audience under age 10. Jin took a deep breath, looked down at the book, and made a decision he would never, ever admit to anyone outside this room. He did the voice, a deep, rumbling, ridiculous dragon voice that made both twins shriek with delighted terror. The brave knight approached the cave, Jin growled dramatically, where the terrible dragon awaited. Yes! Sora screamed. More. 20 minutes later, Jin emerged from the guest room, voice hoarse and dignity in tatters. Mara was waiting with a glass of water and a suspiciously amused expression. Don't, Jin warned. I didn't say anything. Your face said everything. My face said that you did an excellent princess voice in Chapter 3. Jin grabbed the water and downed it in one gulp. The princess was important to the narrative. Uh-huh. She had crucial dialogue. Absolutely. I am still a feared crime lord. Of course you are. Mara's smile widened. A feared crime lord who does a really convincing falsetto. Jin should have fired her on the spot. Instead, he found himself fighting a smile. This was becoming a serious problem. Later that night, Jin received a message from an unknown number. No call this time, just a text. Clock is ticking, Kang. Deliver the shipment, or the little ones pay the price. Jin's blood went cold, then hot, then something beyond temperature entirely. He forwarded the message to Vincent with 3 words. Find them, tonight. By morning, they had a name, Park Soo-min, a former associate who'd been skimming money from Jin's operations for years. He'd been caught, humiliated, and exiled from the organization. Apparently, he'd spent the last 6 months building enough resources for revenge. He'd been watching Jin, watching Mara and the twins, documenting their routines, their schedules, every detail of their lives. Jin looked at the surveillance photos Vincent spread across his desk, pictures of Sora and Luna playing in the park, Mara walking them to school, all 3 of them entering Jin's building. He's been planning this for months, Vincent said grimly. We got sloppy, boss. Didn't see him coming. Where is he now? Underground. But we have leads. Give us 48 hours. You have 24. Jin's voice was ice. And Vincent? When you find him, don't kill him. Vincent looked surprised. Sir? Bring him to me alive. I want to handle this personally. There was something in Jin's eyes that made even Vincent, who had seen Jin do terrible things to terrible people, feel a chill run down his spine. Yes, sir. Jin spent the next 24 hours existing in two worlds. In one world, he was orchestrating a manhunt, calling in favors from every corner of his network, deploying resources that would make government agencies jealous, tracking Park Soo-min through credit card transactions, security cameras, and informants on every street corner. In the other world, he was sitting on the floor of his living room while a 5-year-old painted his nails. Stop moving, Sora commanded, tongue sticking out in concentration. You're messing up the sparkles. Jin looked at his left hand. Each nail was a different color. Pink, purple, blue, green, and something that might have been orange but could also have been radioactive waste. I need my hands for work. You can work with pretty nails. It's called multitasking. Luna was reading on the couch, legs kicked up, looking profoundly disinterested in the nail art session. But every few minutes, her eyes would flick over to Jin, checking something. Mommy says you've been stressed, Luna said casually. Is someone being mean to you? Jin's jaw tightened. No one's being mean to me. Because if someone is, you can tell us. Sora and I are very good at dealing with bullies. We have strategies. What kind of strategies? Well, first you tell a teacher. If that doesn't work, you ignore them. If that doesn't work, Luna's expression went dark. You bite them. Luna! Mara's voice came from the kitchen. We talked about the biting. It's a last resort strategy. Jin found himself fighting another smile. Have you bitten anyone? Tommy Peterson, 3rd week of kindergarten. He said my drawings were stupid. Luna shrugged. He stopped saying that. Luna got suspended. Sora added helpfully. But it was worth it. It was absolutely worth it, Luna confirmed. Jin looked at these tiny, fierce, completely insane little girls and felt something dangerous happening in his chest. He was getting attached. Actually attached. The kind of attached that meant he would absolutely, without hesitation, destroy anyone who tried to hurt them. His phone buzzed. A message from Vincent. Found him. Warehouse on the docks. Moving in now. Jin stood abruptly. I have to go. Sora looked up, nail polish brush frozen mid-stroke. But we're not done. You only have sparkles on one hand. I'll be back soon. You can finish tomorrow. Promise? Jin looked into her earnest little face and felt his heart twist. Promise, he said. He didn't know if he could keep it. The warehouse was dark and smelled like rotting fish. Jin walked in alone, despite Vincent's protests. He wanted to handle this himself, needed to handle this himself. Park Soo-min was tied to a chair in the center of the room, bloodied but conscious. Vincent and his team had done their job well. Jin Kang, Soo-min spat, blood dribbling from his lip. Finally decided to show up yourself? Jin stopped 5 feet away, hands in his pockets. You threatened children. I threatened leverage. There's a difference. Is there? Oh, don't pretend you're some kind of protector. Soo-min laughed, an ugly sound. I know who you are. I know what you've done. You've killed fathers, destroyed families, ruined countless lives. But suddenly you care about some maid's brats? Jin didn't respond. You're getting soft, Kang. That's what happens when you let civilians into your world. They make you weak, vulnerable. Soo-min leaned forward, eyes glinting. Kill me if you want. Won't change anything. Others will come for them. Your enemies are watching. They see what I see. The great Jin Kang brought to his knees by a pair of 5-year-olds. Jin stood very still. He thought about his life before the twins. The emptiness, the cold efficiency, the way he'd wake up every morning with nothing to look forward to except the accumulation of more power, more money, more fear. He thought about Sora's tiny hands trying to fix his hair, Luna's skeptical eyes softening whenever he read them a story, Mara's smile when she caught him doing something unexpectedly human. He thought about the 7 drawings on his fridge and the sparkly nail polish on his left hand. "You're right," Jin said finally. "They make me vulnerable." Sumin smirked. "But you're wrong about one thing." Jin stepped closer, and there was something in his eyes that made the smirk falter. "They don't make me weak. They make me dangerous in a way you can't even understand." He leaned down until his face was inches from Sumin's. "Because before them, I had nothing to lose. Now I have everything to lose, and I will burn this entire city to ashes before I let anyone take them from me." Sumin's confidence crumbled. "You're bluffing. You wouldn't risk everything for..." "Wouldn't I?" Jin straightened, pulled out his phone, and made a call. "It's done. Send the message." He looked back at Sumin. "In about 30 minutes, every organization I do business with, every ally, every associate, every contact in every corner of this country will receive a very clear message. Anyone who threatens the woman or the children answers to me personally. Not my people, not my resources, me." "That's insane. You're exposing yourself, showing weakness." "I'm showing strength." Jin's voice was calm, the kind of strength that comes from having something worth protecting. "You'll never understand that, because you've never had anything worth protecting." He turned to Vincent. "Take him somewhere comfortable. Keep him alive." "You're not going to kill me?" Sumin sounded confused, almost offended. Jin paused at the door. "Killing you would be easy. Living with the knowledge that you failed, that you made yourself an enemy of not just me but everyone I know, that you'll spend the rest of your life looking over your shoulder. That's much worse." He walked out into the night air, breathing deep. It was done. His enemies knew the truth now. Jin Kang had a weakness: a housekeeper named Mara and 2 tiny girls named Sora and Luna. But they also knew the consequence of targeting that weakness: utter annihilation. Jin drove home faster than usual, something urgent burning in his chest. He needed to see them, needed to make sure they were safe, even though Vincent had confirmed security an hour ago. The penthouse was dark when he arrived. He checked the guest room first. Sora and Luna were asleep, tangled together in their usual starfish and curl formation. Mr. Chomps the dragon had migrated to Sora's side of the bed, clutched tightly in her small arms. Jin stood in the doorway, watching them breathe. These tiny humans, who had invaded his life with chocolate-covered hands and impossible questions and an absolute refusal to be intimidated by him. These tiny humans who had somehow become the most important thing in his world. They waited up for you. Jin turned. Mara was standing in the hallway, wrapped in a cardigan, looking tired but awake. "They tried to stay up until you got home. Sora made it until about 11. Luna held out until midnight, but she fell asleep in the middle of interrogating me about whether vampires needed to sleep." Jin huffed out something that might have been a laugh. "You got the second half of your nails done," Mara continued, nodding at his right hand. Jin looked down. His right hand now matched his left, a chaotic rainbow of colors and sparkles. "When did they..." "You were reading chapter 5, the part with the wizard. Sora snuck up behind you and did the whole hand, while you were distracted by the spellcasting scene." Jin should have been annoyed. He wasn't. "Mara, we need to talk." Her expression shifted, guarded. "That sounds serious." "It is." He walked past her to the living room, turned on a single lamp, and sat on the couch. After a moment, she followed, settling into the chair across from him. "There are things you need to know," Jin said carefully. "About who I am, about what I do, about the danger you and the girls are in just by being here. I told you. I already know. You know I'm a crime boss. You don't know what that means." Jin paused, gathering his thoughts. "I've done terrible things, Mara. I've hurt people, killed people, built an empire on blood and fear. There's no excusing it, no justifying it. It's who I am." Mara was silent, waiting. "Tonight, I received information that a man was planning to kidnap your daughters, to use them against me, to hurt them to hurt me." All color drained from Mara's face. "What?" "The threat has been neutralized. I've taken steps to ensure no one will ever try something like this again." But you need to understand what staying here means. Being close to me. It means danger. Constant danger. For you and for them. Mara was trembling slightly. Why are you telling me this? Because you deserve to know. And because... Jin hesitated. This was harder than facing down enemies. Harder than any negotiation he'd ever conducted. Because I think I want you to stay. All three of you. And that's not fair to ask without you knowing the full truth. You want us to stay? Yes. Even though we're loud and messy, and the girls have probably cost you hundreds of dollars in ruined clothing. Yes. Even though Luna still calls you a vampire and Sora tried to baptize you with orange juice last Tuesday? Even though all of that. Mara stared at him for a long moment. Jin couldn't read her expression. Then she laughed. Not a nervous laugh, not a scared laugh, a real, full, surprised laugh. Jin Kang, she said, using his first name for the first time. Are you asking me to move in with you? Jin's heart did something strange. I'm asking you to consider a permanent arrangement. There's a full-time position here if you want it. Better pay, better hours. The girls could go to better schools. You would have security, stability, everything you need. And you would have us. Jin went quiet. That's what this is really about, isn't it? Mara's voice softened. You're not just offering a job. You're asking us to be... what? A family? The word hit Jin like a bullet. Family. He hadn't had a family since he was 12, since his parents were killed by a rival gang, and he'd been left to claw his way through the underworld alone. He'd told himself he didn't need family, didn't want it, that it was a weakness he couldn't afford. But then a woman with a messy bun and 2 chaotic twins had crashed into his life, and suddenly the word didn't seem so terrifying anymore. I don't know how to be a family, Jin said honestly. I don't know how to be a father, or a whatever I would be to you. I only know how to protect, to provide, to eliminate threats. That's a start. It's not enough. It's more than a lot of people offer. Mara leaned forward, holding his gaze. Jin, I've been on my own since the girls were born. Their father left before they were even walking. I've worked 3 jobs, lived in terrible apartments, worried every single day about whether I could give them enough. And in 4 weeks, you've done more for them than anyone ever has. I read them stories. Anyone could do that. No. You made them feel safe. You made them feel wanted. Do you know how rare that is for kids like mine? Kids whose own father couldn't be bothered to stick around? Jin didn't know what to say. The danger scares me, Mara admitted. The thought of someone trying to hurt my babies. I can't even... She took a shaky breath. But I've been scared my whole life. Scared of not making rent. Scared of not being able to feed them. Scared of failing them. At least here, with you, I know someone's got my back. I'll always have your back, Jin said, and he meant it more than he'd ever meant anything. Mara smiled, eyes shining. Then yes, we'll stay, if you'll have us. Jin felt something unlock in his chest. Something that had been closed for so long he'd forgotten it could open. I'll have you, he said. All of you, for as long as you want to be here. Mara stood, crossed the space between them, and did something Jin wasn't prepared for. She hugged him. Not a polite, distant hug. A real hug. The kind that said, I trust you, and I'm glad you're here, and we're in this together. Jin didn't know what to do with his hands. He'd been hugged exactly twice in the last 20 years, both times by Sora during leg attacks. Slowly, awkwardly, he raised his arms and hugged her back. It was uncomfortable and weird, and his sparkly nails looked ridiculous against her cardigan. It was perfect. A small voice from the hallway destroyed the moment. Are you guys kissing? They sprang apart. Sora was standing there, hair wild, eyes huge, looking like she'd witnessed the scandal of the century. We were hugging, Mara said quickly. Just hugging. That's what people say before they kiss. Luna told me. She saw it in a movie. What movie is Luna watching? The vampire is in love with Mommy. Jin pinched the bridge of his nose. I'm not a vampire. You have to get married now. It's the rules. When people hug, they have to get married, and then they have a baby. That's absolutely not how it works. I want a baby brother, Can the baby be a vampire too? Luna appeared behind Sora, rubbing her eyes. What's happening? Why is everyone yelling? Mr. Vampire and Mommy are getting married and having a baby. Luna's tired eyes went wide. Wait, what? No one is getting married or having a baby, Mara said at maximum volume. But you were hugging. Adults can hug without getting married. That sounds fake. Jin watched this chaos unfold and felt something he hadn't felt in 20 years. He felt happy. Genuinely, ridiculously, inexplicably happy. He was standing in his $1,000,000 penthouse at 2 a.m, covered in glitter nail polish, listening to a 5-year-old demand a vampire baby, and he was happier than he'd ever been running his criminal empire. Life was very strange. 6 months later, things had changed significantly. Jin Kong was still a feared mafia boss. He still ran the most powerful criminal organization on the West Coast. He still made grown men tremble with a glance. But now he also attended parent-teacher conferences. Mr. Kang, thank you for coming. The teacher, Mrs. Patterson, smiled nervously. Everyone smiled nervously around Jin. I wanted to discuss Luna's creative writing. Jin sat in a tiny chair meant for kindergarteners, his knees practically at his chin. Beside him, Mara was doing her best not to laugh. What about it? Well, the assignment was to write about what their families do for work. Mrs. Patterson slid a piece of paper across the table. This is what Luna submitted. Jin read the paper. My mom cleans houses. My new dad is a businessman. He goes to meetings and talks to people, and sometimes the people make him angry, so they have to go away forever. He says they go to a farm upstate, but I think that's code for something else. He also has very nice suits and 7 people who follow him everywhere and call him boss. I think he might be in charge of something important, like the whole city, or the world. I haven't figured it out yet, but I'm investigating. Jin looked up at Mrs. Patterson. It's creative fiction. She wrote nonfiction at the top. Children often mislabel their work. She also drew a picture. Mrs. Patterson produced another paper. This is you, apparently, surrounded by what she described as loyalty and fear. The drawing showed a stick figure in a black suit standing on a pile of smaller stick figures. Some of the smaller figures had X's for eyes. Jin didn't blink. Modern art. Very interpretive. Mara grabbed his hand under the table, squeezing hard enough to communicate, "Shut up right now." We're working on helping Luna distinguish between imagination and reality, Mara said smoothly. She has a very active fantasy life, lots of stories about vampires and dragons and things like that. The vampire thing. Mrs. Patterson looked relieved. Yes, she does talk about that a lot. Something about her stepfather being a vampire? Kids say the wildest things. Jin made a mental note to have a conversation with Luna about operational security. Later, in the car, Mara burst out laughing. Your face when she showed you that drawing. It's not funny. She literally described money laundering to her kindergarten teacher. She described people going to a farm upstate. That's practically poetry. She's 5. How does she know so much? She reads everything. I found her looking up corporate hierarchy last week because she wanted to understand why Vincent calls you boss. Jin groaned. I need to have better OPSEC. You need to have a conversation with your very observant daughter about not sharing family secrets at school. Jin went quiet. Mara glanced over. What? You called her my daughter? Oh. Mara's cheeks flushed. I didn't mean. I know you're not technically. It just came out. I liked it. Mara looked at him, surprised. I liked it, Jin repeated, eyes on the road. When you said that, it felt right. Mara smiled, slow and warm. It is right. You know that, don't you? The girls adore you. They've started calling you Dad when you're not around. They have? Sora started it. She told her class that her dad was a very important businessman who was also possibly magical, and that he read the best bedtime stories in the whole world. Something lodged in Jin's throat. Luna's more subtle, Mara continued. She just casually mentioned her dad when arguing with another kid about whose parent could win in a fight. She said, and I quote, My dad could destroy your dad with his mind. That's concerning. That's Luna. Jin pulled the car over, something overwhelming building in his chest. What are you doing? I need a minute. He sat there, hands on the steering wheel, breathing carefully. Jin? Are you okay? I never thought I'd have this. Mara reached over, took his hand. When my parents died, I decided I would never let anyone close to me again. It was safer, easier. I built walls, Mara, walls so high I couldn't see over them. And then you walked in with your terrible organizational skills and your ridiculous children, and somehow you just climbed over them, like they weren't even there. To be fair, Sora climbed over the actual wall in your garden last month. I'm trying to be emotionally vulnerable here. Sorry. Continue. Jin took a breath. I love them. The girls. I love them like they're my own. I didn't know I was capable of that. I didn't think I had it in me. Mara's eyes were shining. You've always had it in you. You just needed someone small enough to squeeze through the cracks. Two someones. Two very loud, very chaotic, very perfect someones. Jin looked at her. Really looked at her. I love you too. Mara's breath caught. I know we haven't talked about it. I know this started as a job and became something else, and neither of us planned it. But I love you, Mara. You and Sora and Luna. You're my family now, the only family I want. A tear slipped down Mara's cheek. That's a very big declaration for a random Tuesday afternoon. I don't do things small. She laughed through her tears. No, you don't. She leaned over and kissed him. It was soft and sweet and tasted like promises. When they pulled apart, Jin noticed something outside the car. An old woman at a bus stop, staring at them with an expression of deep disapproval. We're being watched, Jin said. Jin, she's like 80 years old. Witnesses are witnesses. Mara kissed him again, longer this time, deliberately making a show of it. The old woman's scowl deepened. Perfect, Jin said against Mara's lips. Now she definitely thinks I'm a vampire. 1 year later, Jin Kang married Mara Santos in a ceremony that was absolutely not attended by half the criminal underworld. The flower girls were, of course, Sora and Luna. Sora scattered petals with the enthusiasm of someone disposing of evidence, covering not just the aisle but also the first 3 rows of guests. Luna walked with solemn dignity, pausing occasionally to glare at anyone who looked at her sister wrong. The vows were simple, no frills, no dramatic declarations, just promises. I promise to protect you, Jin said, holding Mara's hands, to provide for you, to read bedtime stories in ridiculous voices, to tolerate glitter nail polish, to attend every parent-teacher conference, no matter how uncomfortable the chairs are. Mara laughed through tears. I promise to keep you human, to remind you that you're more than your empire, to make you pancakes on Sunday mornings, to love your murderous scowl and your secret soft heart. It's not secret anymore. It's still soft. They kissed, and somewhere in the front row, Sora's voice rang out clearly. Finally, now can we have a baby vampire? The reception was chaos. Vincent, who served as best man, gave a speech that carefully avoided any mention of Jin's actual profession, while somehow conveying that Jin was a man of strong convictions who always followed through. The twins gave their own speech, which was less a speech and more a dramatic reenactment of how they'd met Jin. And then I hugged his leg, Sora narrated, while Luna mimed Jin's horrified reaction. And he looked at me like I was an alien. His eye did the twitchy thing, Luna added. Like this, she demonstrated. And then he said, "Get out." But he didn't mean it, because he let us stay forever. And now he's our dad, Sora concluded triumphantly. And he's not a vampire. Probably. Jin, watching from the head table, felt something dangerous prickling behind his eyes. Are you crying? Mara whispered. No, it's allergies. To what? Feelings? Something like that. Mara took his hand under the table. It's okay to cry at your own wedding, you know. It's actually considered normal. Nothing about this wedding is normal. My florist has a outstanding warrant. My caterer is in witness protection, and my new daughter just announced to a room full of criminals that I'm probably not a vampire. So? Jin looked at her, at this woman who had upended his entire existence, and felt the tears fall. So I've never been happier. 5 years later, Jin Kang retired from organized crime. It was unprecedented, unheard of, the kind of thing that made headlines in certain underground publications. But Jin had made his decision. He'd spent decades building an empire. Now he wanted to spend decades watching his daughters grow up. Are you sure about this? Vincent asked, as Jin signed the final transfer papers. More sure than I've ever been about anything. The organization will be fine without me. I've chosen my successors carefully. The infrastructure is solid. Jin set down his pen. I've done my time, Vincent. I want something different now. Like what? Jin smiled. It was still a rare expression on his face, but it came easier these days. Like taking Luna to her art show. She won first place, did I tell you? Drew a portrait of our family. The teacher said she had remarkable attention to detail and a slightly concerning understanding of shadow dynamics. That tracks. And Sora has a soccer game tomorrow. She's terrible at it, can't kick to save her life, but she runs around the field like a tiny hurricane, and her team seems to find her enthusiasm infectious. Also tracks. And Mara and I, Jin paused, something softening in his expression. We're trying for a baby, the natural way this time. Vincent's eyebrows shot up. Really? The girls have been asking for years, and I want to know what it's like. To be there from the beginning. Vincent was quiet for a moment. Then he did something he'd never done in 20 years of service. He hugged Jin. You deserve this, boss, Vincent said gruffly. All of it. I'm not your boss anymore. You'll always be my boss. Jin hugged him back, awkwardly, but genuinely. Thanks, Vincent, for everything. For what it's worth, they changed you, Mara and the twins. When you first hired her, I thought it would be a disaster. I thought they'd distract you, weaken you. Instead, Vincent stepped back, shaking his head. Instead, they made you someone worth following, not because you were powerful, because you were good. I was never good. You became good. That's harder. Jin left the office that day and drove home in his normal car. No security detail, no bulletproof glass, just a regular sedan. The house, their real house now, not the penthouse, was full of noise when he arrived. Sora was practicing goal kicks in the backyard, regularly missing the net entirely. Luna was on the porch, sketchbook in hand, capturing her sister's failures with artistic precision. Mara was in the kitchen, and something smelled incredible. Dad! Sora spotted him first, abandoning her ball to sprint across the grass. She launched herself at him, now 10 years old but still greeting him like she was 5. Did you watch? I almost got one in. I saw from the driveway. Your aim is improving. Luna says I have the accuracy of a broken compass. Luna's being dramatic. Luna's being honest, came the voice from the porch. Luna had inherited Jin's directness and Mara's artistic eye, a combination that made her simultaneously brilliant and terrifying. Jin walked to the porch, dropping a kiss on Luna's head. She pretended to be annoyed, but leaned into it. Drawing? Recording family history. Sora's athletic journey needs documentation. Why? For her future biographers. When she inevitably fails to become a professional soccer player, they'll want to understand why. Has anyone ever told you you're mean? Many people. I consider it a compliment. Jin smiled and went inside. Mara was at the stove, stirring something that smelled like heaven. He wrapped his arms around her from behind, pulling her close. Hey you, she murmured. How did it go? It's done. I'm officially retired. Mara turned in his arms, eyes searching his face. How do you feel? Jin considered the question. 6 years ago, he would have said nothing. He felt nothing. That was the point. Now, he felt everything. The warmth of his wife in his arms, the sound of his daughters bickering outside, the smell of dinner cooking, the absolute overwhelming peace of ordinary life. I feel free, he said. Mara smiled, that same warm smile that had cracked him open all those years ago. Good, because I have news. She took his hand and placed it on her stomach. Jin's breath stopped. Is that? 8 weeks. I found out this morning. Jin stared at his hand on her belly, feeling nothing and everything, the weight of the past and the promise of the future all crashing together. We're having a baby? We're having a baby. He kissed her then, deep and desperate and full of joy. We're having a baby vampire, Sora's voice screamed from the doorway. They broke apart to find both girls standing there, eyes huge, faces split with identical grins. How long were you listening? Mara demanded. Long enough, Luna said smugly. I told you years ago this would happen. I have a very good predictive algorithm. You were 5. I was advanced. Sora was bouncing like she'd been plugged into an electrical outlet. Can we name it? Can I name it? I want to name it Rainbow Sparkle Dragon. We're not naming the baby Rainbow Sparkle Dragon. Then what about Vampire Jr.? Also no. Luna was already sketching in her notebook, rapid strokes capturing the moment. I'll draw the baby's first portrait. I have experience. I drew one for the Harrison's cat, and it came out great. The Harrison's cat had 4 extra legs in your drawing. That was artistic interpretation. Jin stood in the middle of his kitchen, surrounded by chaos and love and noise, and marveled at the complete impossibility of his life. 6 years ago, he had been a monster, cold and empty and alone. Then, a woman with a messy bun and 2 destructive children had knocked on his door, and one of those children had hugged his leg and ruined his favorite shirt. And everything had changed. Not slowly, not gradually, but like an avalanche, like a flood, like a tiny chocolate handprint on an expensive white silk shirt that somehow became the most precious thing he owned. He still had that shirt. He'd never cleaned it. It hung in his closet next to $1,000 suits, a reminder of the night his life had started. Hey! Mara touched his face, bringing him back. Where'd you go? I was just thinking. About? About how a ruined shirt turned out to be the best thing that ever happened to me. Mara looked confused for a second, then laughed. Sora's first hug attack. You looked so horrified. I was horrified. And now? Jin looked at his wife, at his daughters, at the life he'd somehow built from the ashes of everything he'd been. Now I'm grateful, he said. Every single day. For the chocolate handprints and the sparkly nail polish and the 5-legged horses and all of it. Every chaotic, impossible, beautiful moment of it. Sora squeezed between them, wrapping her arms around them both. Luna rolled her eyes but joined the hug anyway. We love you too, Dad, Sora said. Even though you're still probably a vampire, Luna added. Jin held them all close and felt his cold, dead heart beat warm and strong. Outside, the sun was setting. Inside, dinner was almost ready. Somewhere in Mara's belly, a new life was beginning. And Jin Kong, former ruthless mafia boss who had once hated children and chaos and anything that threatened his control, stood in the middle of his messy, noisy, perfect family and knew one thing for certain. This was all he ever wanted. This was everything. The end